Good morning, and thank you for joining this webinar on the future of work. Change is happening faster than ever right across the globe. Environmental pressures, population growth, massive advancement of technology, and significant shifts in the demography of the workforce, to name just a few. In step with these, people's aspirations and desires for their work are also changing. Globalization, digitalization, and other megatrends are bringing radical shifts to how we live and work. Today, we are in the conversation with Mr. Ankur Warikoo. Ankur is an internet entrepreneur. He's the co founder of Nearby and was previously the CEO of Groupon India and APAC. He's an alumni of the Indian School of Business, Michigan State University, and Hindu College, Delhi University. Welcome, Ankur.
Thank you.
The unfolding COVID 19 crisis is challenging people, households, and firms in unprecedented ways. Containing the pandemic and protecting people is the top priority. But disrupted supply chains, containment measures that are limiting economic and social interactions, and falling demand are putting people's jobs and livelihoods at risk. So, to begin with, Ankur, why don't you share some of your insights about the world that we'll be in post COVID 19?
Thank you firstly for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you everyone who's listening in. I hope all of you are safe, healthy, and are staying indoors. It is critical. These are unprecedented times. These are unusual times. I'm 40 and I hope that I never get to see this ever again in my lifetime. But such are times that this has taken a shape of its own. And I spent a lot of time on thinking about what the post-COVID world would look like. And here's how I think about it. There are essentially two things that one needs to consider. And this is true for any crises, not just for COVID, but for anything that may materially happen in our lifetime. And several economic crises have happened in the past and so on. One is what is inevitable during every crisis, and we are experiencing this right now, is there is muted demand, there is muted economic progress, there is muted economic development. And that's just the natural fallout of people being anxious, people losing their jobs, people saving onto their monies, people just being very, very cautious about where they spend, how they spend, and whether they spend it all. So the core question to ask is, which are the industries slash jobs slash functions that are experiencing a temporary dip in economic activity, and which are the industries that are perhaps going to look at permanent or extremely long-term impacts of this crisis. So it's very evident that in the middle of all of this where we are, there are some industries which are clearly going to be impacted, but only temporarily. You could think agriculture being one of them. There is absence of labor right now, but agriculture is going to come back, and perhaps even more so once all of this is over, because it's the fundamental ingredient for a lot of things. Manufacturing is most likely going to come back, at least in the industries which are core. There may be an upsurge, which we're already experiencing in online education or online content. If you think about more B2C industries such as food delivery or e-commerce, they're going to come back, and perhaps in a far bigger way, because people would love to order in whatever they want of their lives rather than step out and do so. But there are some industries which have seen a material and a permanent shift. Travel is going to be impacted, and perhaps in a meaningful manner. It's never going to come back to the normal state as it was as recently as 3 months back. Public transportation is going to be looked at in a completely different manner. Public spaces, whether it's for recreation or whether it's for entertainment, malls, stadiums, amusement parks, swimming pools, all of that is going to see a material shift. We may never ever get back to the normal that we were used to. So the question one needs to ask, and is the question that I'm asking myself, is which are the industries that will go through a temporary blip, 3-6 months, give or take, and which are the industries that will go through a permanent or extremely long-term change. And that then demands or changes the equation of what's going to happen. So I am not going to stand here and make predictions, because I don't think I'm nearly qualified to do so of what's going to happen now. But I think all of us in our own measure have the wherewithal to decide and to have at least have an opinion on which industries are likely to see a fundamental shift and which are just going through a temporary.
All right, Ankur. Yes, we totally understand what you're saying. Uh, so we will leave COVID-19 aside for the time being because enough is being said about it already. So, what for future of work? What are the kind of changes do you envisage for employment and employability? Is loyalty versus commitment the mantra, or is there a new mantra that we're talking of for the new age worker, which is devoid of the COVID-19 situation, but for the future of work? So, if you can tell us about how things are going to change as far as work is concerned.
Sure. So here's my take on it. One is there is clearly a shift that's going to happen towards remote working. We've already seen it. Most of us, if not all, are working from home, and we're witnessing a very different way of doing things. And it's not as easy as it may seem. Like for people like you and I, maybe it is been slightly easier because we just moved what we were doing in an office setup to the home setup. But I was speaking the other day to a very senior leader in Genpact, and he was talking about how this has materially impacted them because Genpact is a knowledge processing outfit. They work on critical knowledge processes for global organizations, most of which are highly regulated. So if you are working, let's say, with a UK bank for their process, it's not just you can pick up your laptop or your iPad or your phone and start working from home. That's not even allowed, regulatory. So you have to have a system or a tool or a mechanism that allows you to work on that process from the safety of your home, but is just as sacrosanct from a process perspective. So they had to, and this is what they've done, they had to ship physical CPUs and monitors and keyboards, which were aligned to the process that they were executing for a client of theirs, to the homes of each of their employees. And these are employees that are earning what, 15, 20, maybe 25,000 a month at best. So it's not that they're living in their own homes. It's not that they're living in their own two-bedroom apartments. They're most likely sharing spaces. They're most likely staying with friends. So it's a very, very different world. And for all of those to do that, now imagine that Genpact goes through this struggle, goes through this entire process evolution. After 3-6 months, when things are slightly better, are they going to go back to their offices? I think maybe, but not in the way that it was. So clearly something has changed and has become the new normal. So one is remote working is definitely going to become the norm. And that means for someone who's thinking of employability, someone who's thinking of how do they need to change themselves towards the new working era, there needs to be comfort and understanding and, of course, appreciation for what it takes to work from home or work outside of an office. And also then the nuances of how does one get disciplined, how does one be productive, how does one be accountable, and how does one be approachable when they are not in an office setup. Because all of these things matter and they become harder when you're in a home setup. Because you're not sitting in front of your team members and they can't just tap on your shoulder and be like, hey, iske baare mein kuch batana. They have to reach out to you in a manner that may not be direct, in a manner that may not be formal or professional, but that's how it is. So one is just adapting yourself to the mindset of what's working from home. But two, I think a bigger shift that's going to happen is, and I think India will be slightly late in that, but I see that already happening. The West is there to a great degree already, is this entire upsurge in the gig economy or the gig workers economy. People who are not working for a company, for a profile, for a salary at the end of the month. They are essentially deploying their time for multiple companies, for multiple projects, for multiple days in a month. And they are in control of their time, but they are simultaneously working on different things that make them feel fulfilled or at least give them what they want. And that's going to happen more and more. If you are a content creator, you could, the post-COVID world, just be online and present what is your art and be working with multiple companies creating content. If you are a web developer, you could be working online and creating web apps for multiple organizations at the same time. If you are a sales individual, you could actually be selling on the phone, over emails, or maybe even in person for different companies at the same time. And just drawing what is a commission-based structure plus a small fixed salary or whatever the case is. So I think that is going to be a fundamental shift because people will get used to it. The one thing that I want to stress upon is whatever it is that we're going through, please recognize that companies are investing significant resources to make this shift happen. So the likelihood that they will go back to their old world is very less. It's almost next to zero. So they will settle at something which will be in the middle of where they are right now and where they were in the past. And you have to make sure that you as an employer or employee need to be ready with that. If you're someone who is just feeling, oh no, my best productivity is when I'm working in office, when I'm clocking 9 to 5, and that's the only way I can work, it's quite likely you will have a really hard time post-COVID. But if you're someone who's just adapting really fast and making themselves attuned to working remotely and working in a gig manner, which is project-based, freelance-based, and just deploying your time and multiple clients, then you stand to gain a lot post-COVID.
That's from the perspective of the industry and the world that is changing around us. Could you also tell us a little about the aspirations of the new generation? The future of work is for them. So, what has changed and what's going to change?
I think, and I'm assuming most of the listeners here are young students or at least students in undergrad or postgrad, and this can be a really anxious time for all of you. So the first thing I want to do before I answer this question is help you understand that whatever is it that we're going through is temporary. And you have to be always cognizant of the fact that your immediate future has very little impact on your long-term future. All of us over-exaggerate what the immediate future means to us and always undervalue what the long-term future could mean to us. You're 21, 22, 23, and there are years ahead of you in how you will end up working, how the world is going to change. This conversation is trivial, honestly trivial, in the sense that whatever happens in post-COVID will be at the end of 20 years, the least meaningful part of your entire life. Because the world's going to fundamentally change and COVID will not be the reason for that. It will be several things that maybe we'll talk about in this course of this conversation. So it's important for you to keep perspective. It's important for you to always bear in mind that you're extremely young. I'm 39. And I'm sure most of you 20-year-olds feel that you are really old, but I cannot begin to tell you how young 39 feels. I cannot begin to tell you how much ahead of you the entire life is, and you're just getting started. So don't bog yourself out with, will I get placed in the next 3 months, 6 months? Will I get the job that I want? Will I be able to do this and that? Of course you will be able to. Maybe it'll be hard, but eventually you'll get there. All that you need to keep doing is preparing yourself for the future. And I will tell you what. But just as a student, what are the things that you need to bear in mind? How is the future of work going to be? And I think that there are some fundamental things that I just spoke about, which you need to bear in mind. The biggest thing for me is the purpose of college, the purpose of school is not to give you skills and be preparing you for the job. In my opinion, the way that you should be looking at your school and your college is, do I know what it means to become a student at any point of time in my life? Do I know what it means to become a student at any point of time in my life? Not just right now when I am a student, but say 5 years down the line, when something else happens to the world, something else happens to the industry that you're in, something else happens to the company that you're working at, which forces you to reimagine the way you've been working. And at that point of time, there may not be some school and college helping you get through that. But your ability to become a student, your ability to learn things all over again, your ability to unlearn things that you've already learned, that is the prized asset. Nothing else is more important. So if you are in school and college right now, 100% of your focus should not be on ye mera marketing ka course, finance ka course, IT ka course, supply chain ka course. All of those are going to change. They've already changed most likely by the time you graduate. What is important is, do I understand what it is to pick an entirely new topic and to become good at it without the need of a classroom? Do I understand what it means to pick up an entirely new topic and and start practicing it without an instructor? Do I understand what it means to learn something completely new from scratch, because that is the requirement, and I don't have a course or a curriculum or an exam that I can fall upon to help me prepare. I have to do it with my own will. That is the only thing that you need to do, because any such conversation on future and work, honestly, and I'm not trivializing what we're doing right now, any such conversation on future of work is meaningless. It is meaningless. I am not nearly an expert to predict what the future of work is. And anyone else who claims to is also most likely lying. No one knows what the future of work is, because the world's changing at an unprecedented rate. It's changing far faster than the human mind is even capable of deciphering. So the only hope in hell that you have as a student is that you are able to adapt to that change. Not that you're prepared for all that is going to happen, but that you know how to react to all that is going to happen. That is the material. And there, the future of work is, of course, machine-led. The future of work is, of course, artificial intelligence. The future of work is, of course, virtual reality. The future of work is, of course, augmented reality. The future of work is, of course, data. But how will it manifest? No one knows. No one knows. Virtual reality, AI, ML, all of these are fancy things. And we're just starting to understand. So for anyone to claim that this is what I know is going to happen in 5 years, they're just lying. Simple. But what you have to know is technology is going to be a big driver of the world going forward. Science is going to be a big determinant of the world going forward. Less and less human interaction and more intelligence brought in by machines is going to be the way forward. How do you, as an individual, right now in school, in college, in a learning environment, prepare yourself for that? Is not going to be through learning the subjects, but by preparing yourself to be a student.
Ankur, you have touched upon the technology bit from the perspective of students learning. However, if you can also talk a little about how our lives will be impacted in terms of what will be the acceleration of AI and machine learning. Are jobs going to get replaced? Are humans going to lose jobs? This has been a long debated topic for years together. So if you can just talk a little about that, and what a few things that we would take care of as students, as employees, to ensure that we are always upskilled and ready to go.
So this is an eventuality, and do not try and run away from it. Do not think that it is decades away. All jobs that are process oriented and can be codified in machine language will go away from humans. Period. That's it. Anything that is mechanical, anything that can be automated, anything that has a process attached to it that does not have any judgment attached to it, does not have a conscience attached to it. So let me step back and just try and be very simplistic with this. Try and understand what are machines good at and what are humans good at. Machines are good at computation. Machines are good at even predicting by getting lots of data points together, analyzing them, and finding or looking at patterns and concluding that this is what's likely to be. Humans are good at judgment. Humans are good at conscience. So if you have a simple example, if you have an autonomous car, and this autonomous car is being driven by a machine, and right in front of the car is a small girl playing with a doll and has run on the street, and the car is being told by the machine, you have to stop, because that's how you save that girl. But let's say your brakes fail, and the machine is now like, oh my God, I can't stop. So I have to swerve. I have to go either right or left. And let's say there's a wall to your left, so you really can't go anywhere because the machine has concluded that there is no space there. And to your right are 4 other people walking on the pavement. Now, what is the machine supposed to do? Bam into the wall and maybe hurt you, bang into the girl and possibly kill her, or swerve to the right and possibly endanger the lives of those 4 pedestrians as well walking on the pavement. It's not an easy answer. And I don't know what you would do if you were in the same spot. I don't know what I would do if I'm in the same spot. And that's where the machine and the conscience comes in. So anything that is mechanical, which is brake when you brake, take a turn when you have to turn, put on your headlights when you have to, give the indicator when you have to, move forward when you have to, speed enough when you have to, speed less when you have to, slow down when you have to. All of those are mechanical things. A machine will do that better. So are drivers going to go out of jobs? Yes, 100%. 100%. But the conscience and the judgment-led jobs, which is sales, is that going to go out? No, not anytime soon. Sales is a lot more driven by human emotions, by human psychology. It's not going to go out. Marketing? No, it's not going to go out. It is something which is ingrained in how humans react. A lot of the data analysis is going to go to the machines, but the conclusion and the execution of that data is still going to be with humans. So it's the same thing that happened several years back when the Industrial Revolution happened. And people thought, oh my God, farmers are going to lose their jobs. And yes, that's what happened. Farmers lost their jobs and a lot of mechanized agriculture took place. And today we have tractors and all those things that help us farm. So not so many people are required for farming. What did people do then? They went to what was a higher conscience job. And that's the same thing that's going to happen. Machine learning, as computers become more and more advanced, more and more sophisticated, is going to take over. You have to be prepared for upskilling yourself always towards something that is not process oriented, but something that has human orientation attached to it. Something that is not one that can be made into 0 and 1 bits and bytes and translate into a human computer language. Something that will always have human emotions come in. Something that will always have a layer of conscience or a judgment layer attached to that. Those are the upskilling opportunities. Now that will be everywhere, every function, every industry, every job, every company will have elements of machine-based processes and human-based processes. And that's how the world will keep evolving as you go.
All right. And another aspect is about the globalization, global mobile work teams, diversity, so to say, in the future of work. So if you can also talk a little about how the work teams will change, how will our perspectives change, and how will the inequalities that are there that will slowly get reduced.
So as I said, with gig economy coming in and people not being attached to a certain company, a certain team, a certain project, you suddenly have the world as your playground. You could be a web developer coding for someone in the US, coding for someone in Africa, coding for someone in Europe, or even in India. You could be a graphic designer and making graphic art for anywhere else in the world. You could be a content creator doing the same thing. You could be a sales guy on the phone selling to anywhere and to anyone in the world. So what is going to happen is the globalization of the workforce, and people who have an appreciation for cultures, have an appreciation for working with different people and understanding their nuances, they're definitely going to be ahead of the curve. So my suggestion to anyone who wishes to explore that side is start and recognize how cultures and how work is done differently in different setups, because it is different. How we work in India is very different from how we work in the US, how we work in Europe, and so on and so forth. And the sensitization towards that is a critical input towards you becoming a future global worker. Having said that, it is also possible that you will be working in a company on a project, and yet you will have teams from across the world because it's now remote settings. And one doesn't need to be in an office and in a small locality. It could be completely spread out. It could be distributed. And that's how a large part of at least the US tech companies have begun to even think of the workforce. And that means that even if you're not a gig worker, you may end up working with a global team. And that's towards a specific project or towards a specific company's goal. Even then, you will have to be sure of knowing how different cultures work and how different people respond to different elements. And that is a completely different thing that most people are not being trained on. Most people don't even recognize as important, but it's something that would set people apart from the ones who choose not to go down this discovery and will just think that I'm going to work the way I always do because other people have to respond or change to me and I'm not the one who needs to change.
Okay, so we're taking some questions from the listeners who've logged into the session. So one of them could be from one of the listeners who asks, how do we ensure our productivity is unchanged or enhanced in a remote working environment? That is about the work from home or remote working. And there is another question which is a little different, which says, will specializations become obsolete? Should students aim at varied certification and compulsively some in technology domains?
Okay, let me answer
So,
the second question first because I think that's a pertinent question. I feel that you as a student will benefit a lot if you have a technology orientation. It is conclusive that the future of work is either with technology or in technology. And that's the choice you have to make. Either you're someone who is working with technology or you're someone who's working in technology. It's possible that you have chosen a path which is not in technology. So you're a management student, or you are a fashion student, or you are an art student, or you're a commerce student, or whatever else it may be. In which case, you most likely may not work in technology, but there's no running away from the fact that you have to work with technology. And that means the more and more you can get ready for being technology friendly, not call yourself technologically challenged. That's not going to be the cool word ever, ever. You will have to be technologically friendly. You'll have to be someone who understands technology, whether you work with it or not. So there's no escape. To the first point, to the first question of how can you ensure productivity while working from home? Um, here is a different take on it, and that's only coming in from an operator's perspective because I do run a startup which is remote working currently. Um, it all begins with trust because the notion that we have, particularly in the Indian culture, is if someone's working from home, they're not. If someone's working from home, they're always distracted. If someone's working from home, they're not being their best. If someone's working from home, then they're not doing what they're supposed to do. That could be true if it's a one-off case. But when the entire company is working, when an entire team is working, when an entire project is being remotely managed, the likelihood that someone can escape work is very, very less because they have no choice but to always surround themselves with the work that's happening by their peers, and that is going to keep delivering, unless, of course, the entire team decides to chill out, which is not going to be the case. So, measuring productivity, I feel, is not the right way to do it. In fact, the counterintuitive way to think about this is not necessarily measuring productivity, but measuring a balance between downtime and uptime. What I mean by that is when you're working from home, when boundaries are blurred, when you're not traveling to your office, when you are 2 steps away from your kitchen, 2 steps away from your bedroom, and 2 steps away from your bathroom, there are no physical boundaries between work and home, you end up working a lot more than you would otherwise. You end up spending a lot more time on your screen than otherwise. You end up being in that work zone a lot more than otherwise. Because at work, it was easy. You came in at 9, so you switched on. You left at 5, you switched off. And then you had your life to take care of. But now, boundaries are blurred. You're eating food and you're on your laptop. You're taking a chai break, but you're doing it in front of your laptop. You step out, but then you get a call and you come back again, and it's just blurred. So what I have realized is it's very important for people to actually get allotted downtime when they're working remotely, which means that you compulsorily switch off from work. It's not about you forcing your employees to always be on work. It's you forcing your employees to be off work while they're working remotely, because that will ensure that they don't lose their productivity. That if they're working for only 6 hours, that is still just as productive as it would if they were working 8 hours in the office. But that is the way that you will have to balance it, because if you don't do that, they're going to feel quite fumble and quite I would say just messed up in their head, because there is no boundary between work and home, and they will not know how to dissociate between when should they stop working and when they should go back to living their
all right. Um, it's sounding very interesting, Ankur. Some of these questions that are coming in are specific to industries as well. So, a couple of questions on how will the FMCG, hospitality, service industry get affected. I think future of work is one. I think their perspective is more to do with COVID-19, how things are going to change, which obviously is future of work again. So they want to know that. And we also have a question where whether digital learning is going to take over institution-based learning. Okay, very pertinent to us. And how should students prepare for a recession-proof career? So few things. I just told you about a few questions, so you can pick up whichever one goes into the
Yeah, sure.
thread.
Let me start with the first one, FMCG. So, in my opinion, the FMCG industry is not going to have any impact. Whatever impact it's witnessing, it's temporary, and that's because distribution supply chain is global. That's because manufacturing is not happening. But once COVID is over, FMCG is going to come back. It's by definition a commodity business, and it's a definition of essentials business. So, we are going to need our bread and our butter and our soap and our shampoo and all of those things, and that is material going to absolutely come back. So I don't see anything worrying there. Hospitality, yes, because that's going to make a big shift. Travel is not going to be the same ever. There is my prediction, at least 12 to 18 months before the travel industry begins to show signs of recovery. And by the time, most likely, most travel companies, whether it's airlines or hotels or hospitality companies in general, they may have just run out of money and shut down. So it's not going to be a pretty story at all. And there, I feel travel is going to take a slightly different shape, where there will be a lot more appreciation in my opinion, of domestic tourism. So there'll be a lot more appreciation, especially in India, around domestic travel within India. There'll be a lot more isolation, where you will not be able to go to a religious place or a tourist place or an amusement park or anything like that just because you want to show up. There'll be a lot more restriction on how many people are there and how they're navigating through that and so on. And I feel that a lot more digital-based travel will pick up. What I mean by that is literally people putting on their virtual reality glasses and augmented reality, witnessing what it is to be in Goa, witnessing what it is to be in Italy, what it is to be in China. And I think a lot more of those products and services will come up. They're, of course, not a replacement for the real thing, but in the meantime, I feel that the hospitality industry is going to see a big damage done to itself for no fault of his, and a lot more of different experiences around travel and hospitality will come. I feel that the five-star hotels, surprisingly, will see a renewed interest, because those are the ones that will ensure that they're well sanitized, they're clean, they're always up to mark, and so on. So I unfortunately predict a lot of mid-segment to low to mid-segment budget travel taking a big hit, because people will be very anxious, but the premium ones may just see a lot more business coming in because people will trust them. Can you repeat the second question, Ritu?
I had asked about how does a student prepare for a recession-proof career?
Recession-proof. I don't even know what a recession-proof career is. It's the equivalent of asking how does one prepare for a failure-proof life. It's not going to happen. Simple as that. Recessions are not in your control. Failures are not in your control. Crisis is not in your control. So when I'm hoping what you mean by that is you are in a career which is never affected by a recession, and honestly, there is no career like that. The only career is that you don't have it, because that's the only way that you don't get affected by it. So the only career is you become a billionaire, retire, and you never have to work, so you don't really care about it when the recession comes. It's an eventuality that your career at some point of time in your lifetime will be hit by a recession, will be hit by a crisis, and that will, in some material ways, impact how you work, maybe even impact whether you work in that industry going forward or not. So think of all those people who are in real estate right now, who are in travel and hospitality right now, who are in public transportation right now. It's quite likely they will never be able to go back to their industry in the same way. It's quite likely they will not be willing to go back to their industry in the same way. So then the question becomes not that I am an industry expert, but what skill or function expert am I in? Was I in sales of real estate and I can apply that sales to some other industry? Was I in ops of that real estate and I apply that ops and supply chain and process knowing or knowledge to some other industry? Was I in marketing of real estate and I can apply those marketing skills to some other industry? Those are the right questions to ask. So I would always suggest don't try and foolproof your life, because that is a stupid goal to have. It's not going to happen. Instead, try and make yourself adaptable to any change that comes your way, because that's the right thing.
There is a question on digital learning, whether it's going to take over institutional based learning. I think you've answered it earlier, but maybe you want to reiterate once again for the listener who's asked this question.
100%. Here's my prediction. I think, like, let's talk about India. India has some 35,000 education institutions. Like, it's crazy. We don't need these many because most of them are not even good. So here's what's going to happen. I feel that the top tier, and when I say the top tier, I don't mean necessarily the 5 or 6 that you know of, but let's say the top 500,000. Those education institutions are going to continue being institution-based, campus-based learning places because they add value, they are geographically well-placed, they have history, they have a backing and a result to show and past performance to rely on. So they're going to thrive. And then most of the long tail that was being served by these 34,000 odd other education institutions honestly serving no purpose, in my opinion, they're going to just be taken over by digital learning. So people will have 2 choices to make. If they want to study data analytics, they will go to a great university / college / institution where data analytics as a course is taught. Or they will not go to the Warikoo Institute of Data Analytics just because it is closer to home or they've got admission. They will then pick up the Stanford data analytics course and pay for that. And that will be online. And that is, in my view, the end outcome of education from now on. The top tier or the good ones will stay, continue being campus-based. In fact, if anything, they will become even better because there will be only so many of them. And most people will then be smart to say, I don't want to go to some random college or some random institute. I would much rather study from the best in the world. And I'm willing to pay 1/3 of that money that I would have otherwise paid for a normal course and get a degree and become just as job ready as anyone else.
All right, thank you, Ankur, for that. Before we part, I would also want you to speak a little about entrepreneurship. So you're an entrepreneur, so all the budding entrepreneurs who are listening to this would like to have some kind of insight. What is it that they should do in order to survive in the future of work and look at their entrepreneurship abilities?
Right. So there are 2 kinds of entrepreneurs right now. One currently who are founders and one future founders. Currently founders, it could be a really hard time for you, honestly, because fundraising will be tough. It could be very tough for your business if you are in the industries that are materially impacted. You may be running out of money. And honestly, the only thing that matters currently if you're running your business is survival. Nothing else is more important. It is just survival. Stop focusing on growth. Stop focusing on window dressing your business for fundraising. Stop focusing anything that does not help you survive. The only thing that matters is survival. You have to get your costs down. You have to get yourself into a point where you have enough runway for 12, 18 months. You have to get yourself into a point where you're not bleeding money anymore. And survival is the only thing that matters. If you're a future founder and you want to start your own business, it's actually a really good time to start. Most good businesses get built in crises, and that's because of 2 reasons. One, most people don't want to start a business in a crisis because they're like, let me just go back to stability, let me go back to predictability, and let me go back to my cushy job. So most people who would otherwise be competition to you are not even there, which is number 1. Number 2, because you start in a crisis, you have no choice but to think first principles about your business. Because you don't have the benefit of fundraising, you don't have the benefit of being luxurious, you don't have the benefit of a fast-growing market. You are actually building a business the way it should be built always. And that habit, that experience sets you up for life. So any business that starts during a crisis and is able to navigate through this crisis ends up richer in their experience and a lot more aware of what it takes to build a business. So if you want to be an entrepreneur and you think you have it in you to become one, this could be a great time to start. That would be my biggest.
Okay, but before we close, there is one last question, which is from a professor. and a design professor who's asking, what is the future path for creatively inclined students? If you can throw some light on that.
I genuinely feel the world will see a resurgence of creative individuals and creativity in a way that it hasn't before. Like for the last 150 odd years, the world has only been about industries, about science, about process, and about everything. But now people will realize there's a lot more to art, there's a lot more to creativity, there's a lot more to just appreciation and eye for the finer things in life. And creative individuals, in my opinion, if they are future ready in terms of being technology friendly, in terms of thinking of their art not to be priced as per their time, but to be priced as per their art, it's a beautiful world to be entering. Because if you are someone who writes songs, designs dresses, is a graphic designer, is a musician, is a live performer, think of the opportunities that this world now presents to you through technology. You could be literally sitting here, like I'm a content creator, and I am conducting webinars which are being attended by people from across the world. And I could have never done it in person. Like I am speaking to students not just from IILM, from across all institutions, and people from across other companies are joining in. I could not have done it if I was at the IILM campus. And that is the power. I'm literally in the comfort of my home, wearing shorts, keeping my feet up on a stool, speaking to all of you in a way that is still perhaps just as engaging, if not nearly so, as it would be in person. That is the power of technology. And that's where I feel that creative individuals can literally break through the boundaries that have defined them all these years and create a boundary-less appreciation for the art that they create. And I remain a optimist for all creators in the future times to come.
So, on that note, I think we will conclude this session, this webinar. Thank you so much for joining in, Ankur, and sharing your thoughts. I'm very certain the students will be greatly benefited. Thank you. We hope to meet again because IILM is closely connected with you. So, thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Everyone who's listening in, again, stay safe, stay indoors. This is just temporary. We will get past this. We're in this together, and let anxiety not take the better of. It's easier said than done. I recognize it, but keep reminding yourself that whatever is it that you're going through is most likely just a reflection of your expectations that you imposed on yourself. Let go of that. Keep an open mind, and I'm sure good things will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.